Hello, hello, what's going on, beautiful people? It's your boy Smirto. I hope y'all are enjoying this new Splitgate Arena Reloaded update as much as I have. I've been putting a ton of time into it, and I wanted to make a quick sensitivity guide and kind of a settings video just for all my controller players out there, because I've been getting some questions in Discord and in-game about what I run, and hopefully I can provide you guys some sort of feedback and give you a little bit of insight on how all the different settings work, because there's a couple settings in game that are kind of confusing and they don't really explain everything too in depth, so I figured I could do that today in this video. But for those of you that don't know me, I wanted to introduce myself. I play on Xbox. Here are my stats here if you're interested. I've been top 100 both in Season 0 and now in Season 1 as well, and I placed pretty well in the recent community challenge tournament as well, so that kind of, hopefully that provides some sort of credibility to what I'm going to talk about here. So
who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that?
Let's get straight into it. So first, let's talk about the base kind of sensitivity here, your horizontal and your vertical sensitivity. And this is, like I said, this is your base, right? So whatever you choose here will affect how all of your settings work, right? And what I recommend strongly for my controller player friends is to run a relatively lower sense. I personally run 6.6. I feel like it's the best for myself. I know there are some players that run a lower sense, some that play a higher sense. I did increase it a little bit in this latest update. I did play on 5.5 for pretty much the entirety of Splitgate 2. And I just recently increased it with the new aim assist changes, which I'll talk a little bit about later. This is post-editing Smirto. I totally forget to talk about aim assist later. Basically, all you need to know is I turned my aim assist down from 1.0 to 0.9 just because I felt like the 1.0 just felt extremely slow, and 0.9 kind of feels similar to how it was in beta. So, yeah, there you go. But it's one of the things they adjusted in the relaunch of Splitgate. So I honestly encourage you guys just to really test this for yourself and see how everything feels for you, and feel free to tweak it as you play. So next, let's talk a little bit about the zoom sensitivity. I personally keep this at 1.0. I think the default actually is like 0.8, I believe. I put mine at 1.0 just because I feel like it's the most consistent. I appreciate like consistency in my aim, and I feel like that's the most consistent way to do it, is just keep it the same as your horizontal and your vertical. Some players prefer having a lower zoom sense, especially at like longer ranges. It helps them, but I personally run the 1.0. So let's talk a little bit about the dead zone type, because this is a question that I personally had and I didn't quite understand it. So what I ended up doing was I made a quick Reddit post, and I wanted to get some feedback on what everything all meant before I made a video on it. So I made a Reddit post, and I actually got a response from the CEO of Splitgate, Cardinal Soldier himself. So I'm going to put the screenshot here, but I'll just read off what he said. So the main difference will be noticed when you turn at an angle on controller. So radial will accelerate in the exact direction that you are pushing, meaning that if you push the right stick at a 45-degree angle, it will accelerate in that direction. Axial, on the other hand, will accelerate either horizontally or vertically. So at a 45-degree angle, you won't accelerate fully 45 degrees. It'll be mostly upward, but it won't be like a straight up one-to-one. So with that in mind, I highly suggest running radial, because again, kind of goes back to that theme of consistency, right? That's what I want the most in my aim, and that's what I think you guys should go for. So I highly recommend radial. It works best for me. So up next, we're going to talk a little bit about dead zone. And dead zone for me is pretty straightforward. I feel like you should keep your dead zone as low as you possibly can without getting stick drift. So for those of you that don't know, stick drift is when you don't have your thumb on the thumbstick and your controller is kind of like moving around. Like your aim is moving around, if that makes sense. So if that's something that you guys are experiencing, I recommend turning up your dead zone a little bit. And I recommend adjusting these settings at the same time. So if you're going to increase it by 0.1 on both your inner and your outer dead zone. I run the Razer Wolverine Pro controller, the third version of it, and I'll include a link in the description. But that controller has something called Hall effect sticks, which don't get stick drift. So I would highly recommend picking up a controller that has Hall effect sticks if possible, but most default ones nowadays don't have that. But regardless, I recommend running the lowest. I run straight up 0, and that's kind of why, because I want the best response, if that makes sense. Whenever you increase your dead zone, basically what that does is it makes your thumbstick less responsive. And I'm going to include a photo here just to kind of show you what that looks like, but I want my controller to be as responsive as possible. If I need to make quick adjustments with my aim, especially in close range, dead zone will kind of mess with that a little bit. And I think that goes perfectly into my next point when talking about response curve. Response curve is another one of those things that is very heavily debated in FPS games and amongst controller players, and I wanted to provide you guys a little bit of information on that to kind of explain what the difference is between linear and exponential. So I'm going to include a graph here. Linear basically is a one-to-one response curve where whatever input you use with your thumb, you will get that directly in game, right? And linear is good because it's the most responsiveness you can get with your aim on controller. That is a pro, but it can also be a con in some circumstances because it's very unforgiving, right? If you overcorrect your aim on linear, you will feel it. It's less smooth than exponential, but I feel like it has the highest potential because of the fact that it's the most responsive. So that's why I run linear. Now I will explain exponential. Exponential is kind of like a bell curve. So basically what that does is it smooths out your aim. So in longer ranges, you'll still feel very responsive, but in close quarters, when you're making very fast adjustments, it kind of smooths it out. So it won't feel as responsive, but it'll kind of be less oppressive, if that makes sense. Exponential is good, especially for casual players, because it helps alleviate a lot of those fast adjustments. It kind of smooths out that process, but it isn't as responsive. I think exponential is good, but if you really want to take your game to the next level, I highly recommend linear. That's what I've ran on pretty much all my FPS titles the last couple years, and it has honestly completely changed the way that I aim. So quickly with the acceleration type, I just run radial. I ran radial in Splitgate 2, and I continue to run radial. I feel like it's the most responsive, which is what we're looking for when it comes to controller. So next, let's talk about acceleration. Acceleration In the beginning of my time in Splitgate 2, I didn't mess with it too much, but I now realize that it is probably the most underrated setting to play on controller. What acceleration does, I mean, it's in the name, is it basically accelerates how fast your character turns. So the faster the acceleration, the faster you turn. And this also scales with your base sensitivity. So for example, if you were running a horizontal sensitivity of 10 and you were running an acceleration of 2, it would basically feel like you have an aim, like an aim sensitivity of 20 when you're turning in a circle, if that kind of makes sense. And what I've found personally is whenever I have increased my acceleration, my gameplay has gotten better every single time. So that's why I run it on max. I run it on 5. It allows me to turn very quickly, and I think when portaling on controller, it is probably the best setting you can have, like really cranked up. I think if you were, so like, let's compare the opposite of that, right? Where you're not running the acceleration and you're running a fast sensitivity, just a base, like horizontal and vertical sensitivity, right? You'll be able to turn around quickly, but you'll be sacrificing a lot of that, that like more fine-tuned adjustment when you're aiming, and it'll be a lot harder to aim. So I feel like this is the best of both worlds. If you run a lower sense, like your horizontal and vertical, you'll get more control, and then when you need to make those fast adjustments, like when you're portaling or when you're turning around to face someone who's shooting behind you, that acceleration will really come into play. Now, the acceleration time, I feel like, is personal preference. I run it on 0.8. I've tried it at lower values. I've tried it at like 0.5, 0.6. And whenever I do that, I feel like it's affected my base sensitivity too much to the point where I feel like I get thrown off. So I feel like 0.8 to 1.0 is kind of the sweet spot, but I would definitely recommend kind of messing with it and seeing how it feels for you guys. So next, let's talk about button bindings, because I feel like this is something that's very important in a game like Splitgate, especially on controller, because there's limited bindings on controller, especially default controllers, and there's a lot of different button mappings for Splitgate. So I personally don't run 2 portals. I know there are players that do run 2 portals. I just run alternating portal. It doesn't affect my ability to triple portal, and it honestly just feels fine. It works for me, and it does limit your portaling a little bit, so you won't be able to make some of those like really high level plays with portals, but the base mechanic of like triple portaling and everything still works when you use alternating portals, so that's why I use it. And then in terms of movement and everything, so first of all, I keep my portaling on the default, which is your right bumper. I know a couple players who put it on their face buttons. I know a couple players that have like scuff controllers or basically pro controllers that have paddles. I highly recommend getting some sort of pro controller if you can invest the time and the money, because like I was saying earlier, there's so many different bindings in Splitgate, and having more options flat out is good, 1, and 2, it's super important to have your thumbsticks and your fingers off of the face buttons as much as possible. You want to be able to aim and portal all at the same time. You want to be able to aim and move all at the same time. So having a pro controller with even 2 paddles on it really opens things up for you. Now, to talk about movement, I put my jump on left bumper and my crouch on the right stick. Now, I do that so I can move while portaling and shooting at the same time. I feel like that's the best option, and when I played previous FPS titles, when I started out my FPS journey, I kept my jump on A on the Xbox controller, which would be, I believe, X on the PlayStation controller, and crouch on B or circle. And that, I believe, is a little bit limiting because you can't, unless you play Claw, of course. Claw is the one kind of outlier, you know, if you play Claw, you can kind of keep things on default. But if you don't play Claw, I would highly recommend putting your jump and your crouch on buttons that aren't your face buttons. And by face buttons, I mean X, Y, A, and B on Xbox, or triangle, circle, square, and X on PlayStation controllers. Now, in terms of like abilities and whatnot, I keep my ability on the B, or I put my ability on the B button, just because I'm not really pressing this a whole bunch, and I can just put it on a face button. And then with the Wolverine controller that I have, I actually get 2 extra bumper buttons. So I put my melee on my additional left bumper that I have, and then my close portal on the additional right bumper. Since most of you won't have those options, I recommend putting either your melee on your A button or your X button, or putting your close portal on your A or your X button. And then whatever room you have left, putting that leftover bind on your D-pad somewhere. Now that's up to personal preference. Some players put their abilities on the D-pad, some players put their closed portals on the D-pad. It's really up to you, but those are the settings that I run on my controller in terms of button mapping. And then, lastly, I forgot to mention, if you don't have your field of view to 103, please put it on 103. You want to be able to see as much as possible, and I mean, that's just a basic setting that will instantly improve your gameplay. Now, lastly, we'll talk a little bit about like colorblind settings and whatnot. I keep it on default. I think this is just personal preference. Some players, even like non-colorblind players, like it a certain way. I keep it on default. It looks fine for me. And then for the crosshairs, I use basically, so it's not the smallest crosshair option, but it's the second smallest, if that kind of makes sense. Some players use the smallest, I use the second smallest, works best for me. And yeah, that's all of my settings there. If you guys have any sort of questions, or you want any sort of tips on controller settings or mappings or anything, please feel free to drop a comment, let me know. But hopefully this was helpful for you guys, and I'll be seeing you in the arena, alright? Hey, you guys take care.